A little house in a quiet American town, its windows dim, its cupboards bare. Inside, a 6-year-old girl sits by the window, braids messy, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, whispering to herself as she counts the cars that pass by. Waiting for a father who promised he'd be right back. Outside, rain begins to fall, and somewhere in the distance, the steady footsteps of a police officer echo closer, with a loyal German shepherd at his side. This is not just a story about fear and loneliness. It is about hope, miracles, and the power of love that refuses to let go. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from today? And may your day be filled with blessings and light. The autumn air in Vermont carried a chill sharper than usual that morning, sweeping down the narrow streets of the small town of Millhaven. The leaves, painted in fiery hues of amber and crimson, rustled across sidewalks cracked with age, while chimneys sent thin curls of smoke into the pale sky. The town itself looked modest, its streets lined with weather-worn houses built with practicality rather than grandeur. But each had a lived-in quality, a quiet dignity. The Carter residence, a little blue house at the end of Maple Street, looked smaller than its neighbors, its paint faded, porch steps creaking when the wind pushed through. Yet for years it had been filled with laughter, drawings taped to the fridge, and the smell of simple dinners prepared by a father for his little girl. Now it seemed to hold its breath, windows dark and silent. Inside sat Lily Mae Carter, a 6-year-old girl with delicate shoulders and a frame made thinner by the absence of meals. Her hair, light brown with faint golden strands that glimmered when the sun caught them, hung in tangles against her cheeks. She wore a faded yellow t-shirt and rainbow-striped belt she loved, though she had tightened it more recently because her stomach often hurt and her appetite was nearly gone. Lily's eyes were a clear blue-gray, large and full of longing, the kind of eyes that noticed small details adults often ignored. She sat by the window, her small fingers pressed against the glass, counting cars as they passed, red, silver, blue, whispering quietly as if each passing vehicle might deliver her father back to her. She had counted every day since he left. Her voice trembled with hope when she told her stuffed rabbit, "Maybe Daddy will come home in a silver one." He always said those were the fastest. The little rabbit she clutched was Mr. Hoppy, a stuffed toy with one button eye missing, its seams stitched over in mismatched thread where small repairs had been made. Though it wasn't alive, Lily treated it as a confidant, whispering secrets and fears into its soft, worn ears. She had given the toy a personality of courage, strong where she felt weak, always reminding her that tomorrow might be better. In truth, Mr. Hoppy was an anchor, the only companion she could hold tightly to when silence in the house became unbearable. Her father, Daniel Carter, had always been a steady presence before his sudden absence. At 32, Daniel was of medium build, with sandy brown hair he kept short, and a face framed by days of stubble when work at the computer repair center kept him late. He was a man known for quiet kindness, the sort who lent his neighbors tools without needing them back, who remembered the names of cashiers at the grocery store. His life had been marked by loss early. His wife, Caroline, Lily's mother, had died of complications after childbirth, leaving him to raise Lily alone. That grief had shaped him. He had become fiercely protective, sometimes, weary-eyed, but always patient with his daughter, never raising his voice. To Lily, he was both her father and her entire world. But now 12 days had passed since Daniel had ruffled her hair, promised, "Be right back, sunshine," and stepped out the door to buy milk. He had not returned. His work boots still rested by the door. His toothbrush still sat in the bathroom cup. His phone charger still plugged into the wall. Signs of a man who hadn't planned to vanish. Lily noticed it all, but her child's mind struggled to reconcile why promises could shatter. She pressed her cheek to the glass again, stomach tightening. Hunger gnawed at her like a constant shadow, and though she tried to silence it with sips of water or scraps from the kitchen, nothing filled the void. The fridge contained only a jar of pickles, half a bottle of ketchup, and something that had grown fuzzy and green in a container she had dared taste but regretted. The house, once lively, now creaked like an old ship adrift. At night, the noises seemed louder, the sigh of wood, the settling of beams, sounds her father once explained as houses talking. Without him, those same sounds became threats, leaving her clinging to Mr. Hoppy with wide, sleepless eyes. Across town, while Lily endured her vigil, Officer Logan Hart guided his patrol car through Millhaven's winding roads. The man, at 38, carried himself with quiet gravity. Tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair now flecked with silver at the temples, his face bore the weariness of years on the force. His hazel eyes were often unreadable, yet they softened when directed toward his partner, Rook, his German shepherd. Logan's uniform, neat but worn at the cuffs, hung on him like a daily burden he carried with grim consistency. Logan had once been a family man. His wife Anna had died 6 years earlier in a car accident, and not long after, the court system had separated him from his young daughter when addiction and legal battles in his extended family spiraled into chaos. He lost custody not because he didn't love his child, but because he had been too broken at the time to fight. That wound never healed, leaving him protective of children in ways others sometimes mistook for overreach. His reputation in the department was mixed, respected for his dedication, but sometimes criticized for getting too personally involved. Rook was Logan's solace, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a striking coat of black and silver fur, amber eyes that seemed to read more than they should, and a muscular build honed through training. He had been bred for police work but carried gentleness when off duty, leaning his weight against Logan's leg like an anchor whenever old memories returned. Rook was intelligent, often responding before commands were given, and shared a bond with Logan so deep that colleagues sometimes joked the dog knew his partner's thoughts before he spoke. That morning, Logan drove in silence, the heater blowing warm air against the cold seeping in from outside. He sipped bitter coffee from a paper cup, mind drifting to the cases piling on his desk. Petty theft, noise complaints, nothing urgent, nothing meaningful. But Logan carried within him the quiet ache of a man waiting for redemption, for a chance to make a difference that mattered. Rook sat upright in the passenger seat, ears pricked forward, posture alert but calm, as though waiting for a signal. Back at the little blue house, Lily pressed her stomach, whispering, "Something's moving inside. Is that what hungry feels like?" Her small frame curled onto the couch, shadows stretching across the floor, as twilight came earlier with each passing day of autumn. She tried to be brave, repeating her father's words about emergencies. "If something's really wrong, Sunshine, you call 911. She hesitated, uncertain. Was this an emergency? Her father had always said emergencies were for fires, for broken bones, for car crashes, not for hunger, not for loneliness. But as the pain sharpened, tears slid silently down her face, and the phone on the table seemed to glow in the lamplight. She reached for it, fingers trembling, whispering, "Please, Daddy, come back," before clutching Mr. Hoppy tight. The number was memorized. Her father had drilled it into her like a game once. She dialed, the buttons louder than usual in the silent house. 911, what's your emergency?" A woman's voice answered. Lily's voice cracked as she asked, almost to herself, "Does every dad do this? Leave you and never come back?" The dispatcher froze, the weight of that question settling heavy. Somewhere in the quiet, ordinary streets of Millhaven, a little girl had just revealed her world was falling apart. The wind carried the first bite of evening as it swept through Millhaven, rattling dry leaves along the sidewalks and nudging shutters on the old colonial houses. The town, quiet as it usually was after dusk, looked painted in muted orange by the last rays of sunlight clinging to the horizon. Street lamps flickered alive one by one, casting their glow over cracked sidewalks. Inside the little blue house, Lily Mae Carter held the receiver of the landline phone with both hands, her knuckles pale with tension. Her voice, small and uncertain, drifted into the headset. "Does every dad do this? Leave you and never come back?" She pressed Mr. Hoppy against her cheek, as if the toy could shield her from the silence that followed. At the other end, the dispatcher on duty stiffened. Her name was Angela Brooks, a woman in her mid-40s, compact in stature, with short auburn hair streaked with gray. She had been working emergency lines for nearly 2 decades, known among colleagues for her calm tone and meticulous attention to detail. Life had weathered her gently but firmly. A divorce years ago had left her raising 2 boys alone, and her work became both her anchor and her shield. Angela's voice softened instinctively. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" When Lily whispered, "Lily Mae," Angela knew this wasn't a prank or a casual call. Something in the trembling cadence of the child's words reached into her core. She immediately flagged the call and signaled for an officer to be dispatched. The notification landed on the radio of Officer Logan Hart, whose patrol car hummed steadily along Millhaven's outer road. Rook, his German shepherd, sat alert in the passenger seat, ears twitching at the sudden change in Logan's posture. Logan tapped the wheel twice, a nervous habit he had never broken, before picking up the receiver. "Hart here," he said in his gravelly baritone. The dispatcher transferred the line, and Logan heard the fragile voice of Lily. The words that slipped through nearly broke his practiced composure. He caught Rook's steady gaze, amber eyes unwavering, and found strength there. "Not every dad does that, Lily," Logan said gently, keeping his voice warm yet steady. "Where are you right now?" The girl's faint whisper answered, "At home. Daddy said he'd come back with milk. But it's been so many days. My tummy hurts." Logan's chest tightened. He pressed his foot harder on the accelerator, siren still off to avoid alarming the neighborhood, though the urgency inside him burned bright. Angela Brooks remained on the call, relaying information to Logan as her hands flew over the keyboard. She had traced the address to the small blue house on Maple Street, confirming what Logan suspected. "Stay with her, Officer Hart," she instructed firmly, though her own voice shook faintly at the edges. "Lily, can you tell me about anyone else in the house? Do you see your dad's things?" "Around?" Logan asked as Rook leaned closer to the window, the dog's body tense as if sensing the rising stakes. Lily hesitated, then answered, "His boots are still by the door. His toothbrush is in the bathroom. He didn't take them, but he didn't come back." She paused, clutching her stomach. "It feels like there's something moving inside." Logan exhaled slowly, keeping his own fear out of his tone. "Hold on, Lily. I'm on my way with my partner, Rook. He's a very good dog. You'll like him?" As he turned the patrol car into Maple Street, Logan allowed his mind to wander for just a moment. Calls involving children always unstitched something inside him, something raw and unhealed from his past. His daughter, Emily, had been only a little older than Lily when he had last seen her in a courtroom, clutching a stuffed bear as strangers decided her future. The law had taken her from him, and though he told himself every day that he was doing good by serving others, the hollow remained. This call felt different, almost like a thread tying his broken past to this fragile present. Rook pressed his nose to the glass as they slowed near the Carter house. The dog's body leaned forward, hackles not yet raised but energy radiating from him like a taut wire. Logan cut the siren, parked at the curb, and grabbed his flashlight. Before stepping out, he rubbed Rook's head, murmuring, "This one matters, boy." Back inside the dispatch center, Angela Brooks sat with her headset, her eyes fixed on the call timer, silently rooting for the officer she had dispatched. In the background, younger dispatchers managed less critical calls, their chatter muted by Angela's focus. She had seen tragedies unfold over the phone before, moments when she could only listen helplessly. Tonight, though, she felt a flicker of faith that maybe, just maybe, things could turn differently. Logan approached the porch. The house looked worn but not abandoned. Unopened mail stacked by the door, a wind chime tinkling faintly above. He knocked firmly, calling out, "Lily, it's Officer Hart. I'm the one you spoke to on the phone. I brought my dog, Rook. We're here to help." For a long moment, silence. Then, shuffling footsteps, tentative and hesitant. The door creaked open a crack, revealing one wary blue-gray eye. Logan lowered himself to one knee, flashlight angled away. His expression softened. Lily peeked out, her tangled hair framing her thin face. Mr. Hoppy clutched tightly. Her stomach bulged slightly beneath her shirt, a sign Logan's trained eyes didn't miss. Rook sat down beside Logan, tail brushing the porch, his presence calm but commanding. The dog gave a single soft whine, lowering his head, inviting trust. Lily's gaze flickered to the dog, and for the first time, her expression shifted from fear to cautious curiosity. "He's your dog?" she whispered. "His name's Rook," Logan said quietly. "He's very brave and very gentle with kids. Would you like to say hi?" Lily hesitated, then opened the door wider, extending a trembling hand. Rook leaned forward, sniffed her fingers, and then licked them once, warm and gentle. Something inside Lily seemed to loosen. She stepped closer, pressing her small palm against the German shepherd's thick fur. Logan kept his voice low, steady. "See? He likes you, and we're both here to make sure you're safe." Lily's lips parted as if she wanted to believe him, but didn't know how. "Daddy said police officers help people," she said faintly. "Are you going to help find him?" Logan met her eyes, hazel to blue-gray, and said, "Yes, Lily. I promise." Behind him, the twilight deepened and the street grew quieter. For the first time in 12 days, someone had stepped across the threshold of the little blue house, bringing with him the possibility of rescue, of truth, of something beyond silence. Rook remained beside Lily, tail swishing gently as if claiming her under his protection. And in that fragile moment of connection, Logan Hart understood. This case was no longer just about duty. It was about redemption. The evening settled thick and heavy around Millhaven, the last of the daylight swallowed by a blanket of gray clouds that promised rain by dawn. The street lamps outside flickered uncertainly, their yellow glow pooling in patches along Maple Street, leaving wide swaths of shadow between the houses. From the porch of the little blue house, the neighborhood looked deceptively ordinary. Mailboxes lined up like soldiers, bicycles leaning against fences, the faint hum of a television from a neighbor's window. But stepping inside was like crossing into another world. Officer Logan Hart ducked slightly as he entered, his tall frame framed by the doorway. His hazel eyes, usually hard to read, softened at the sight of the child before him. Lily Mae Carter had retreated a few cautious steps into the dim interior, clutching Mr. Hoppy in one hand while the other rested protectively across her stomach. The small living room smelled of dust and faintly spoiled food. Toys were scattered near the couch, their bright colors dulled by days of neglect. The television sat dark, its power cord unplugged, and the silence pressed against the walls like something alive. Rook padded in beside Logan, the German shepherd's nails clicking softly against the worn hardwood floor. His thick black and silver coat caught the weak light from a table lamp, making him appear both regal and protective. He moved with controlled grace, pausing to sniff the air before circling once near the couch and sitting, ears forward, gaze fixed on Lily. His body was relaxed, yet vigilant, a sentinel in fur. Lily's eyes, wide and uncertain, followed the dog's every move until she finally whispered, "He stays close, doesn't he?" Logan crouched to her level, speaking softly. "That's what he does best. Rook stays close to the people who need him." The child seemed to draw comfort from that. Slowly, she stepped closer to the German shepherd, letting her small fingers brush through his fur. Rook leaned gently into her touch, his amber eyes blinking with patient acceptance. A small, fragile smile flickered across Lily's face, the first Logan had seen. The officer kept his voice even as he scanned the room. "Lily, I need you to tell me when you last ate something." "Yesterday," she admitted, her gaze falling to the floor. "There was something green in a box. I thought it might help, but it made my tummy worse." Logan's jaw tightened, though he kept his tone calm. He reached for his radio, but stopped when a shadow of movement caught his eye. From the hallway, an older woman emerged, startling him. She was small and wiry, her hair a crown of silver curls, her face lined but kind. She wore a faded cardigan and jeans patched at the knees. "This your doing, officer?" she asked, her voice a mixture of suspicion and relief. It took Logan a second to recognize her, Martha Green, the Carter family's neighbor. She had lived on the block for over 30 years, known for her autumn gardens filled with marigolds and tulips. Widowed young, she had raised 2 children on her own while managing a small craft shop downtown. Her years of independence and resilience had made her practical, sometimes brusque, but her heart was softer than she let on. "I saw the lights of your car," Martha explained, her tone gentler now. "I've been worried about Lily, but she's always been told not to open the door for strangers. I tried knocking a few times this past week. No answer." "She's been alone 12 days, Logan said quietly. Martha pressed a hand to her mouth. "Lord have mercy." Then she looked down at Lily, her expression softening. "Sweet pea, why didn't you come over to me?" "I didn't know if I should," Lily murmured, shrinking back slightly. "Daddy said, Stay home till he comes back. Martha blinked away sudden tears and straightened her shoulders. Daniel's a good man. Wouldn't just vanish. She glanced at Logan. Something's not right here. Logan agreed silently. His eyes roamed the space. A coffee mug still sat on the counter with a brown ring dried at the bottom. A jacket was draped over the back of a chair. The calendar on the wall had notes about Lily's swim lessons, Daniel's shifts at work. This was not the home of a man who intended to abandon his child. He turned back to Lily. "Sweetheart, do you remember the last thing your dad said to you before he left?" She thought for a moment, fingers stroking Mr. Hoppy's worn ear. His phone beeped. He looked worried. Then he said he was getting milk. He promised he'd be right back. Her voice broke on the last words. Logan's stomach sank. He knew too well the signs of unfinished business, of someone pulled away against their will. Martha stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "You're safe now, darling. The officer and his dog will take care of you until your daddy comes back." But Logan knew better than to make promises without proof. He rose, pulling out his radio. His tone clipped now as he called in for medical assistance. Lily swayed where she stood, one hand pressing against her distended abdomen. Rook rose immediately, positioning himself at her side, body leaning toward her as if to steady her small frame. "You're going to the hospital, Lily," Logan said firmly but kindly. "We'll get you checked out. Rook will come too." The little girl's eyes widened, fear flickering. "But what if Daddy comes home and I'm not here?" Logan crouched again, meeting her gaze. "We'll leave a note for him. And if he comes back, he'll know where to find you. You don't have to worry about being forgotten." Outside, the wail of an approaching ambulance echoed faintly through the night air. Martha excused herself, muttering about calling her daughter to sit with her while she made arrangements. She touched Lily's cheek once more before stepping out. Within moments, paramedics entered the little blue house. One was Tom Reyes, a stocky man in his early 40s, with close-cropped hair and a kind face framed by laugh lines. Known around town as steady and compassionate, Tom carried himself with quiet authority. "Evening, officer," he greeted Logan. "What do we have?" "A 6-year-old, malnourished, abdominal swelling," Logan replied. "She's been alone 12 days. Tom's expression darkened, but his voice remained calm as he approached Lily. "Hey there, pumpkin. My name's Tom. I'm going to help you feel better." His tone was gentle, practiced from years of dealing with frightened children. He knelt, pulling a small flashlight from his pocket. "Can I take a quick look at your eyes?" Lily leaned closer to Rook, clutching his fur, but nodded. The German shepherd stood rock still, his presence steadying her. Tom gave Logan a quick nod. "We'll need to get her stabilized fast." As they prepared to leave, Logan looked around the house one last time. The walls lined with family photos, Daniel holding a beaming Lily at a beach, at Christmas, in front of her kindergarten classroom, seemed a whisper of a father's devotion. Nothing here pointed to abandonment. Something else had torn this family apart. Rook gave a soft bark, breaking Logan's thoughts. The dog nudged Lily's arm gently, coaxing her toward the paramedics. The girl whispered to him, "Don't leave me," and Rook's eyes glinted in the dim light as though he understood. Logan followed them outside, the crisp night air biting against his skin. The blue house stood behind them, quiet and solemn, its secrets sealed within. He knew this was only the beginning. The ambulance's siren cut through the still night as it sped toward Millhaven General Hospital, its flashing lights splashing color across the darkened streets. Inside, Lily sat strapped to the gurney, her small hands clutching Mr. Hoppy, while Rook lay on the floor beside her, his body wedged between the stretcher and the wall of the ambulance. His amber eyes tracked every move of the paramedics, and whenever Lily whimpered or shifted uneasily, Rook lifted his head and nosed her hand until she settled again. The paramedic, Tom Reyes, kept glancing down at the dog, shaking his head slightly in amazement. "Never seen a dog this steady in my rig before," he muttered. Officer Logan Hart sat opposite Lily, one hand resting on his knee, the other gripping the side rail of the stretcher. His eyes, lined with fatigue, never left the child. The road outside blurred past, a reminder that, though his badge carried authority, tonight his responsibility was something deeper, more personal. He had promised Lily safety, and promises to children were not things he allowed himself to break anymore. When they arrived at the hospital, fluorescent light spilled from the sliding glass doors as they opened with a hiss. Inside, the air was thick with antiseptic and the muted hum of machines. A nurse hurried forward to meet them, Nurse Evelyn Marsh, a tall woman in her early 50s with steel-gray hair pinned tightly at the back of her head. Her sharp cheekbones gave her an austere appearance, but her eyes were warm, a deep green that softened when she bent toward Lily. Evelyn had been a nurse for nearly 3 decades, her career shaped by losing a younger brother to an undiagnosed illness in childhood. That grief had driven her to pursue medicine with unwavering commitment. "Let's get her into exam 3, she instructed, her tone brisk but kind. Lily clung tighter to Mr. Hoppy as they wheeled her down the corridor. Logan walked alongside, Rook pacing at his heel, drawing curious stares from other staff and visitors. Evelyn cast a questioning look at the dog. Logan simply said, "He stays. She trusts him." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. Experience had taught her that sometimes healing required more than medicine. Inside the exam room, Lily was lifted gently onto the bed. Evelyn slipped a blood pressure cuff around her thin arm, murmuring reassurance as she worked. Lily's eyes darted nervously, but Rook jumped onto the foot of the bed with one graceful movement, curling himself beside her legs, his weight steady and grounding. Moments later, the door opened and a doctor entered, Dr. Samuel Chen, a pediatrician in his early 40s, compactly built with neatly parted black hair and wire-frame glasses. His expression was thoughtful, tinged with concern, yet there was a softness about his movements that suggested he was used to putting children at ease. Samuel had grown up as the eldest of 4 siblings in a bustling household, which made him patient by necessity. Years in pediatrics had only deepened his gift for calm attentiveness. He introduced himself in a low, even tone. "Hello, Lily. I'm Dr. Chen. I hear your tummy has been giving you trouble." Lily nodded faintly, clutching Rook's fur. The doctor gently pressed against her abdomen, watching her wince. "It feels bigger," she whispered, "like something's inside." Dr. Chen's brow furrowed as he pulled off his gloves. "We'll need to run some tests," he told Logan and Evelyn quietly. "Malnutrition, dehydration, but the abdominal swelling could be a number of things. I want labs and an ultrasound right away." As Evelyn moved to set up the IV, the door opened once more. A woman stepped in with a clipboard tucked under one arm, her presence commanding attention. Claire Donovan, a caseworker with Child Protective Services, was in her mid-30s, slender but tall, her posture rigid with professionalism. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her tailored gray suit gave her an air of sharp authority. Claire's face was attractive but hard, framed by a pair of pale blue eyes that seemed to measure everything in terms of responsibility and liability. She had spent years on the front lines of broken families, and the weight of those experiences had hardened her outlook. A childhood spent moving through foster homes herself had left scars that influenced her work. She believed fiercely in structure, rules, and the system, even if it meant being the bearer of unwelcome news. "I'm here regarding the minor, Lily Mae Carter," Claire said crisply. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on Logan. "Officer Hart, I assume you were first responder?" "Yes," Logan replied, his jaw tightening slightly. "Then you know the protocol," she continued. "Given her father's absence and her current condition, Child Protective Services will take custody until further notice." At those words, Lily's fingers tightened in Rook's fur, her small voice cracking. "No, I want to stay here. What if Daddy comes back?" Tears welled in her eyes, and Rook immediately shifted closer, pressing his head against her chest in quiet solidarity. Logan's temper flared, but he forced it under control. "She's been through enough tonight. We don't even know what happened to her father yet. There are signs he didn't abandon her." Claire's expression remained neutral, though a flicker of something unreadable passed across her eyes. "Officer, your role ends at ensuring immediate safety. Long-term placement is not your decision," Dr. Chen interjected gently. "Let's focus on Lily's health first. We can't make any placement decisions until she's medically stable." His tone carried quiet authority, enough to pause the rising tension. Claire exhaled through her nose, flipping her clipboard shut. Fine, but I'll remain involved in this case. The system will decide what's best for her. The room quieted again. Lily nestled closer to Rook, the dog's steady breathing slowing hers. Logan pulled up a chair beside the bed, his large hands folded in his lap, his gaze steady on the child. He didn't care what the system decided. He had already promised her something he intended to keep. Hours later, as blood work was drawn and preparations made for imaging, the hospital grew quieter, its fluorescent lights buzzing faintly in the late-night stillness. Logan stepped into the hallway to collect his thoughts. Martha Green, the neighbor, had arrived at the hospital with a bag of clean clothes and snacks for Lily. She was now seated in the waiting area, her cardigan wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her face etched with worry. She looked up as Logan approached. "How is she?" Martha asked, her voice low. "Dehydrated, malnourished. They'll run tests to figure out what's going on with her stomach," Logan replied. He hesitated before adding, "CPS wants to move her into foster care." Martha's expression hardened. "That girl doesn't need strangers. She needs her father, or at the very least, people who truly care for her. She's been through enough." Logan felt the same, though his badge and suspension loomed in his thoughts. Still, looking through the exam room window where Lily lay, curled against Rook, he knew his course. He had seen too many children slip through cracks. He wasn't going to let Lily be another. When he returned to her side, Lily's eyes fluttered open. She whispered, "Will you stay?" Logan's voice was firm. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. Not tonight. Not until we find your dad." Rook gave a soft chuff, as if echoing his vow. And though the night pressed heavy and uncertain around them, for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Lily slept without fear. The morning broke gray over Millhaven. Clouds pressed low, the air carrying the scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Hospital corridors hummed with routine. Carts rattled, intercoms chimed, shoes squeaked across polished floors. Logan Hart sat in a molded plastic chair outside Lily's exam room, a paper cup of coffee cooling in his hands. Through the narrow window, he could see the girl still curled on the bed, Mr. Hoppy pressed against her cheek. Rook curled protectively at her feet like a sentinel unwilling to rest. Logan's hazel eyes softened each time he looked at the pair, but behind that softness, his mind sharpened into determination. He had promised her answers. Martha Green, the neighbor, sat nearby, knitting with slow, deliberate motions. Her hands trembled slightly, though she pretended otherwise, clicking the needles in quiet rhythm. She had not slept much, but the act of creating something, anything, calmed her. Occasionally she glanced toward the room where Lily lay, her lined face pinched with worry. "She's just a child," Martha murmured finally. No little one should carry that much fear in her eyes. Logan nodded faintly, his jaw tight. He rose, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders, when Claire Donovan entered the hallway. The CPS worker was brisk as always, her heels striking the tile with sharp precision. She carried a fresh folder tucked under her arm. "Officer Hart," she said evenly, "I'll be visiting Lily again this afternoon. For now, I suggest you focus on your jurisdiction. Missing Persons has been notified about Daniel Carter's disappearance. It's their case now." Her tone was professional, but Logan caught the undercurrent. She wanted him to step back. "Maybe," he replied flatly, "but Lily asked me to find her father. And I don't break promises to kids." Claire's pale eyes narrowed, though she did not argue. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving a faint trace of perfume and bureaucracy in her wake. Logan exhaled, finishing his coffee in one swallow, then leaned down to scratch Rook behind the ears. "Come on, boy, we've got work." They left the hospital for the Carter house, which still stood silent beneath the weight of unanswered questions. Inside, the air smelled stale, a mixture of dust and faint rot. Logan moved carefully from room to room, flashlight beam catching on small details. Rook padded beside him, nose twitching, body taut with alertness. The living room was as they had left it. Photos of Lily and Daniel smiling from frames on the walls. Logan crouched to examine the answering machine on a small side table. 3 messages blinked red. He pressed play. The first was from Daniel's workplace. "Daniel, we've missed you at your shift. Please call back." The second, another from the office, sharper this time. "If we don't hear from you, We'll have to assume you've quit. The third was from Lily's. School. We've noticed Lily hasn't been in class. Please contact us. Logan's lips pressed into a hard line. These weren't the calls of a man walking away from his life. Rook whined low, tail stiff, as he moved toward the kitchen. Logan followed, scanning the space. The fridge was bare except for old jars. On the counter sat a grocery list, scrawled in hurried handwriting. Milk, bread, apples, soup. Next to it, a receipt for gas purchased the night Daniel disappeared. Logan picked it up, noting the time. He filled up before he left, Logan murmured. So where the hell did he go? Rook's nose pressed against the back door. Logan opened it, stepping onto the small porch that overlooked the yard. The grass was overgrown, leaves littered the ground. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Then he noticed the faint impression of tire tracks leading away from the gate at the back of the property. Fresh enough to matter, though days old. He crouched, running his fingers over the dirt. Someone came in or out this way, he muttered. Just then, a voice called from across the fence. Frank Doyle, a neighbor in his late 60s, leaned against his rake. He was stocky, with weather-beaten skin and a baseball cap pulled low over his thinning white hair. Known for his gruff honesty, Frank had lived in Millhaven all his life. You the cop? He asked, squinting. Logan straightened. Hart, you see anything unusual around here 12 days ago? Frank scratched his chin. I saw Daniel's blue sedan that night. He drove off in a hurry, nearly clipped my mailbox. Later, maybe an hour after, I noticed another car pulling into the alley. Dark sedan, couldn't make the plates. They were in the yard a few minutes, then gone. Did you see the driver? Logan asked. Not clear, tall figure, maybe male, but they were quick. Frank shifted, lowering his voice. Look, Daniel was a good guy. Always helped me haul mulch, lent me his tools. He wouldn't abandon that girl. If you ask me, something pulled him away that night. Logan thanked him, noting details in his pad. As he wrote, Rook gave a sharp bark, pawing at something by the fence. Logan crossed over and found a small scrap of fabric caught in the wood. Dark, torn, smelling faintly of motor oil. He slipped it into an evidence bag, the weight of the mystery pressing heavier. Back inside, Logan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the receipt, the messages, the scrap of fabric. The pieces didn't fit abandonment. They whispered of interruption, of someone's life derailed. He rubbed his temples, fatigue creeping in. Rook sat by his side, resting his head on Logan's knee, grounding him. Logan's phone buzzed. It was Dr. Chen. Officer Hart? I thought you'd want to know. Lily's initial labs show malnutrition and dehydration, but also markers suggesting she consumed contaminated food, likely why her stomach is swollen. We'll keep running tests. Thanks, Doc, Logan said quietly. He hung up, staring out the window at the yard beyond. He had two mysteries now. What had happened to Daniel, and how to keep Lily safe in a system that wanted to whisk her away. As the sun dipped lower, shadows filled the Carter house. Logan rose, pocketing the evidence bag and receipt. We're not done, Rook. This isn't a man who ran away. Something happened to him, and we're going to find out what. Rook barked once, a sharp sound echoing in the stillness, as though agreeing. The next morning dawned pale over Millhaven, a light drizzle misting the streets and washing the autumn leaves into clogged gutters. Logan Hart stood beside his cruiser in the hospital parking lot, his collar turned against the chill. Rook sat squarely at his side, his thick black and silver coat dotted with droplets, amber eyes alert and watchful. Logan had not slept more than a handful of hours in a chair outside Lily's room, but fatigue only sharpened his focus now. The scrap of fabric, the tire tracks, the unanswered calls, all pointed towards something larger. Today he would start at the one place Daniel Carter should have been most visible, his workplace. The drive to Halcyon Technologies, the mid-sized IT firm where Daniel worked, took them across the city to a sleek building of glass and steel. Its tall blue windows mirrored the storm-gray sky. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and polish, bustling with employees carrying laptops and phones. Behind the reception desk stood Paula Grant, a woman in her early 40s with a tightly curled hair dyed auburn, a friendly face worn slightly by long hours. She wore a navy blazer over a floral blouse, her bright smile tempered by sharp, observant eyes. Paula had built a reputation as both approachable and efficient. Her knack for remembering names made her beloved by employees. She greeted Logan with polite curiosity, though her gaze lingered on Rook, who padded close to his master's side, leash taut. "Officer Hart?" she asked. "That's right," Logan said, flashing his badge. "I'm here about Daniel Carter. He hasn't been seen in nearly 2 weeks. I need to speak with his supervisor and anyone else who worked closely with him." Paula's expression faltered. "Daniel's absence? Yes, it's been the talk of the office. He never just vanished like that." She picked up her phone, called upstairs, then gestured toward the elevators. "Mr. Adler will see you. He's the department head." Logan and Rook rode the elevator to the 5th floor, where rows of cubicles stretched in neat lines. At the corner office, a tall man with a lean frame waited. Richard Adler, early 50s, had thinning, sandy hair combed back neatly, deep-set eyes, and the pinched look of someone carrying too many deadlines. His suit was immaculate, his handshake brisk, his voice clipped with efficiency. Adler was known for his pragmatism, a man who valued results above excuses. Years in corporate management had hardened his outlook, though beneath the crisp professionalism was a streak of genuine loyalty to dependable employees. "Detective?" Adler began. "Patrol officer," Logan corrected calmly. "I'm following up on Daniel Carter. What can you tell me?" Adler folded his arms. "Carter was one of my best technicians. Quiet, diligent, no drama. We depended on him for late-night server work, but a week and a half ago, he just stopped showing. At first, I assumed illness. Then when we couldn't reach him, we started to worry. His absence. It isn't like him." "Did he seem distracted or worried in the days leading up to his disappearance?" Logan pressed. Adler frowned. "Now that you mention it, yes. He kept checking his phone during shifts, stepped out for calls more than usual. I confronted him once, and he brushed it off, said it was personal matters." At that moment, a soft knock on the door interrupted. A younger woman with dark hair pulled into a braid, stepped in carrying files. Emily Rhodes, mid-20s, wore a simple green sweater and black slacks. Her features were delicate, framed by thoughtful hazel eyes. She was quiet, diligent, the type who blended into office life without fuss, but she carried an air of empathy rare in the corporate world. Having grown up caring for a younger brother with health problems, Emily often noticed details others ignored. She set the files on Adler's desk, but her gaze flicked toward Logan, then away. "You worked with Daniel?" Logan asked. Emily hesitated, glancing at Adler, who gestured for her to speak. "Yes," she said softly. "He trained me when I started. He was kind, patient. The kind of person who remembered if you liked your coffee black or if you had an exam the next day. The last week he was here, though, something was different. He looked tired. His phone buzzed constantly. One day he muttered something like, 'I can't pay this now.' I don't know who he was talking to." Logan wrote notes, his expression unreadable. "Did he ever mention trouble with anyone? Arguments, disputes?" Emily shook her head. But she hesitated again. "The night before he vanished, he stayed late with me. We were fixing a server issue. His phone rang. I remember the look on his face. It went pale, like the blood drained out. He left in a hurry, told me to finish without him. I never saw him again." Rook let out a low rumble, nose pointed toward a chair near the desk. Logan followed his gaze, noticing a faint trace of oil smell on Daniel's old work jacket draped across the chair. Adler caught the officer's look. "That's Carter's. He left it here that last night." Logan examined the fabric with gloved fingers. The faint smear of motor oil matched the scent on the scrap he had found at Daniel's yard. A connection formed, fragile but undeniable. "Officer Hart," Adler said, his tone softening. "I know you can't promise anything, but if you find him, let him know. His job is still here. We don't abandon our people for falling on hard times." Logan nodded once, pocketing his notes. He glanced at Emily, whose worried eyes followed him out. Something told him she cared more deeply than her quiet demeanor revealed. Back in the cruiser, Logan sat behind the wheel, the evidence bag with the scrap of fabric beside him. Rook settled into the seat, gaze steady. Logan exhaled, murmuring to the dog, "This isn't a man who walked away. Someone reached into his life and pulled him out, and it's our job to pull him back." Rook gave a sharp bark, the sound echoing in the drizzle-slicked lot, like agreement. Rain had turned to a misty drizzle by late afternoon, veiling Millhaven in a silvery haze. The city streets glistened with damp reflections, neon signs shimmering across puddles like restless ghosts. Logan Hart sat in his cruiser across from the First County Bank, his notebook open, the fabric scrap sealed in its evidence bag resting on the dashboard. Rook occupied the passenger seat, his broad head resting on the console, eyes flicking between Logan and the glass doors of the bank. The German Shepherd was 6 years old, his body powerful but tempered by training, fur thick and glossy despite the weather. The scar near his left ear, a relic of a scuffle with a suspect years back, lent him an air of seasoned loyalty, as if he carried the weight of service as much as his handler did. Logan checked his watch before stepping out, pulling his jacket tighter against the drizzle. Rook leapt down beside him, shaking droplets from his coat before falling into step. Inside the bank, warmth and the faint smell of polished wood greeted them. The lobby had marble floors, potted plants, and a quiet hum of muted conversations. At the reception desk sat Megan Ellis, a young woman in her late 20s with cropped dark hair and a scattering of freckles across her nose. Her blue blouse and gray cardigan gave her a professional but approachable look. Megan had an easy smile, the kind of expression that came from someone naturally empathetic, but her quick eyes suggested she didn't miss details. Logan approached, showing his badge. "Officer Hart, I need to review the financial records of a client, Daniel Carter. This ties to an active missing persons investigation." Megan's smile dimmed, replaced with professional seriousness. "I'll get the branch manager." She picked up the phone, murmured into it, then gestured toward a side office. A moment later, Arthur Whitley emerged, the branch manager. Arthur was in his early 60s with a distinguished silver mustache and a tailored charcoal suit. His height and upright posture gave him an imposing presence, but his eyes, gray and weary, revealed the strain of decades balancing books and managing people's livelihoods. He greeted Logan with a firm handshake, his tone careful. "Come into my office." The office was neat, lined with ledgers and framed certificates. Arthur closed the door before sitting opposite Logan. "You're asking about Daniel Carter." "Yes, he's been missing almost 2 weeks. His daughter has been left alone. Anything you can provide, recent withdrawals, debts, unusual activity, could help." Arthur adjusted his glasses, pulling up a digital file on his monitor. Mr. Carter was a reliable client, modest savings, regular payroll deposits from Halcyon Technologies, but his voice slowed as he scrolled. In the 2 weeks prior to his disappearance, he made multiple cash withdrawals, each larger than the last. And there are transfers flagged as suspicious. He turned the screen slightly toward Logan. Logan leaned forward. The entries showed several $1,000s withdrawn in cash, far more than Daniel's paycheck could easily cover, and transfers labeled only as external, routed to an account under the name Millhaven Cooperative Holdings. Logan frowned. "Never heard of them?" Arthur shook his head. "Neither have I. We filed a suspicious activity report. Haven't heard back." Before Logan could respond, Megan tapped softly at the door. "Sorry, Mr. Whitley, but there's someone here you may want to speak with. A woman who said she knew Daniel Carter. She seemed insistent." Arthur looked at Logan, who nodded. "Send her in." The door opened to reveal Sarah Klein, a woman in her early 40s with a tall, slender frame and sharp cheekbones. Her dark hair was streaked with gray and tied back in a loose braid, and her clothes, an oversized coat and worn leather boots, suggested long nights spent outdoors or on the move. Sarah's face carried the haunted look of someone who had seen too much, though her eyes, a piercing blue, were steady. She carried herself with quiet resolve, though the tremor in her hands betrayed nerves. "I heard you were asking about Daniel," she said without preamble, her voice low, roughened at the edges. "I'm Sarah. I knew him." Logan gestured for her to sit. "How?" She hesitated, then perched on the edge of the chair. "I met him 6 months ago, at a support group, for people struggling with debt. He was ashamed, said he'd fallen behind on medical bills for his little girl. Someone approached him after the meeting, A man named Colton promised he could help with a quick loan. Too quick, if you ask me. Arthur's brow furrowed. Loan sharks. Sarah nodded, her jaw tightening. Colton runs with a crew out of the industrial district. They make their money lending cash to desperate folks, then squeezing them dry. I know because I once borrowed from them, spent years paying back double. She rubbed at her wrist unconsciously, as though remembering bruises. When Daniel disappeared, I figured they had something to do with it. Logan's mind turned over the details, the transfers, the withdrawals, the scrap of oil-stained fabric from Daniel's yard. Industrial district. You've seen Colton? Sarah's lips pressed thin. Tall, late 30s, blonde hair cropped short, always wears leather jackets, smiles too wide. He makes people think he's charming until he's not. Rook gave a low growl, as though the description itself was enough to trigger suspicion. Arthur leaned back, troubled. If Daniel was caught in something like that, he wouldn't have simply walked away. Those men don't leave loose ends. Logan's jaw tightened. Which means Daniel may not just be missing, he could be in danger. Sarah met his gaze, her eyes hardening. Or worse. Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the muted tapping of rain against the office window. Finally, Logan stood, tucking the evidence bag and his notes into his jacket. I'll need Daniel's financial statements, full copies. Arthur hesitated, then nodded, printing them out. For official use only, officer. But if it helps find him... Sarah rose as well, pulling her coat tighter. If you're going after Colton, you'll need more than a badge. He's got eyes everywhere, people who owe him favors. I've got Rook, Logan said simply, scratching the German shepherd's neck. The dog's ears perked, his gaze steady, as if ready for the path ahead. Sarah studied the pair, then gave a faint, almost wry smile. Then, maybe you've got a chance. As Logan left the bank with Rook at his side and Sarah trailing behind, he felt the weight of the next step settle on him. The path forward was no longer just about a missing father. It was about a network of predators that had pulled Daniel into their grasp. Somewhere in that tangle of shadows and debts lay the answer Lily needed, and Logan intended to find it. The drizzle had turned into a steady rain by the time Logan Hart steered his cruiser into Millhaven's industrial district. The area was a graveyard of factories long past their prime, brick walls streaked with rust, broken windows patched with plywood, the air heavy with the faint tang of oil and iron. Streetlights buzzed weakly, casting sickly halos through the mist. Rook sat upright in the passenger seat, alert, his black and silver coat damp but gleaming under the glow of passing lights. His ears twitched at every sound, his nose pressed near the window as though trying to catch a scent in the damp air. Beside Logan in the back seat sat Sarah Klein, her long frame bent forward slightly, arms crossed under her coat. The rain had plastered strands of dark hair against her forehead, and though her blue eyes were sharp, they also carried a flicker of unease. She had grown up in Millhaven's rougher neighborhoods, and her past debts to men like Colton had carved lines of caution into her face. Still, beneath her wary demeanor was steel. She had agreed to come because she wanted to prevent someone else from paying the price she had once paid. Logan parked beside a row of abandoned warehouses. He scanned the block, noting which buildings still showed signs of activity. One in particular, an old steelworks, had a dim light seeping from its second-floor window. A black sedan was parked outside, tires slick with fresh mud. Logan tapped the steering wheel. "This matches what Frank Doyle saw behind Daniel's house," he murmured. Sarah leaned closer, her voice low. "That's Colton's kind of car. Always clean, always unmarked. He liked blending in." As if summoned, a figure stepped out of the building and into the rain. Colton Reeves was taller than Logan expected, broad-shouldered, in his late 30s, with cropped blonde hair and a leather jacket that seemed molded to his frame. He moved with easy confidence, a smile curling on his lips as he lit a cigarette, its glow briefly illuminating his angular features. His eyes, cold, calculating, flicked up and down the street as if scanning for weakness. Rook let out a low growl, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. Logan rested a calming hand on his dog's back. "Easy, boy, not yet." They waited until Colton disappeared back inside before Logan and Sarah stepped out into the rain, Rook padding silently beside them. The three moved toward the side entrance where rust ate at the edges of a heavy steel door. Logan pressed his ear against it. Muffled voices echoed within. He motioned for Sarah to stay close. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and damp concrete. Flickering lights dangled overhead, casting long shadows across stacked crates. A handful of men loitered near the far end, their postures sharp, their clothes worn but practical, jeans, boots, leather jackets. Among them, Colton leaned against a crate, talking with a wiry man whose tattoos crawled up his neck. Logan ducked behind a rusting pillar, Sarah crouching beside him. Rook stayed pressed against Logan's leg, silent but taut, every muscle ready. From their vantage, Logan could make out fragments of the conversation. Carter didn't have the money, said he'd find it, but he ran. Colton's voice was smooth, almost amused. He didn't run. Men like Carter don't run. He'll show up once he realizes we have ways of reminding him. A single father with a little girl, that's leverage you can't buy. Sarah's hand clenched into a fist, her knuckles white. Logan felt her tension and shook his head slightly. They couldn't blow their cover now. Suddenly another man entered, a courier, soaked from the rain, carrying a small duffel bag. He handed it to Colton, who unzipped it to reveal stacks of cash. Colton chuckled. Business is good tonight. Logan's eyes narrowed. This was bigger than a missing person case. It was organized extortion, and Daniel had stumbled right into it. Before they could retreat, a loud clang echoed from the other side of the warehouse. Rook had shifted, his paw catching a loose pipe. The sound made every head snap toward their hiding place. Colton's smile widened as he gestured to his men. "We've got company." Logan drew his sidearm, but Colton raised a hand. "No need for violence yet," he said, voice smooth as silk. "Why don't you step out, officer?" Logan exhaled slowly, then rose, Sarah at his side, Rook bristling. The men closed in, forming a loose circle. Colton studied Logan with open amusement. "Hart, isn't it? You've been sniffing around Carter's trail." He glanced at Rook, who stood growling low. "Nice dog, loyal, dangerous. I like him." "What did you do to Daniel Carter?" Logan demanded. Colton tilted his head. "Me? Nothing. He owed money, and I gave him options. Sometimes men like him break under pressure. Shame, really. He seemed like a decent father." His smirk deepened. "But fathers make mistakes." Sarah stepped forward, anger in her eyes. "You destroy people, Colton. I watched you do it. You nearly destroyed me." Colton's gaze flicked to her, his smirk fading for the briefest moment. "Ah, Sarah Klein. Thought you disappeared. And yet, here you are, still following the wrong men into the rain." Rook barked suddenly, the sound sharp, causing one of Colton's men to flinch. Logan seized the moment. "Where is Carter?" Colton shrugged, the picture of indifference. "Alive, for now, but time's running out. If he doesn't pay, well..." He let the implication hang, then leaned forward, voice dropping. "If you want him, Hart, maybe you should follow the trail. Start at the river docks, but be careful. Those waters run deep." The men chuckled, and before Logan could press further, Colton snapped his fingers. His crew dispersed, slipping out into the rain like shadows. Colton himself strolled past them, cigarette glowing, his smirk carved into the darkness. When the warehouse emptied, Sarah sagged against a crate, trembling. "He's taunting us. If Carter's at those docks, he's in real danger." Logan holstered his weapon, kneeling to scratch Rook's head. "We've got our lead. That's more than we had yesterday." He looked at Sarah, determination hardening his hazel eyes. "We'll find him, no matter what Colton thinks." Rook barked once, the sound sharp and resolute, echoing against the warehouse walls. Outside, the rain fell harder, running in rivulets down the cracked pavement. But beneath the storm, Logan felt the thread of hope tighten. Somewhere by the docks, Daniel Carter was waiting, and Logan Hart was not about to let him drown unseen. The rain had thinned to a drizzle, but the clouds still pressed low over Millhaven as night fell. Logan Hart drove his cruiser through narrow streets that snaked toward the river, headlights cutting through the mist. The industrial district gave way to the waterfront, where the skeletons of cranes rose like broken giants against the horizon. Rook sat in the passenger seat, his black and silver fur damp but glossy, ears pricked forward. Sarah Klein rode in the back, silent, her arms wrapped around herself as she stared at the blurred city lights. Millhaven's docks were no longer the hub of commerce they once were. Half the warehouses had shuttered, and rusted shipping containers lined the wharfs like forgotten tombs. But some corners of the riverfront still stirred with life after dark. Life that preferred not to be seen. Logan parked a block away and cut the engine, letting the night settle around them. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice a low rasp. The rain had left her braid clinging to her coat, her blue eyes uneasy but determined. "Colton doesn't bluff, but he loves baiting traps." Logan checked his sidearm, his jaw set. "He wanted me to come, which means Carter's here, or Colton wants me to believe he is. Either way, I'm not walking away." Rook gave a sharp bark, as if in agreement, tail stiff with tension. They moved on the foot, boots crunching on wet gravel. The dockyard stretched ahead, lit by occasional lamps that sputtered and buzzed, throwing jagged shadows. Logan kept Rook close, the dog's nose twitching as he caught scents on the damp air. Sarah followed, her frame taut, hands buried in her coat pockets. As they reached the main pier, a faint sound carried through the drizzle, a muffled cough, followed by a groan. Logan froze, signaling for silence. Rook's ears snapped forward, body rigid. They followed the sound to a stack of shipping containers near the water's edge. A chain secured the doors of one container, but through a small gap, Logan could see movement. Inside, slumped against the wall, was Daniel Carter. His frame looked thinner than the photos suggested, his brown hair matted, stubble shadowing his face. He wore a torn work shirt and jeans, his wrists bound with rope. Even through the dim light, Logan saw the exhaustion in his sunken eyes, but also the flicker of recognition when Daniel looked up. "Dad?" The word was a rasp, disbelief mingling with relief. Rook barked sharply, tail wagging once before stiffening again, as footsteps echoed from deeper within the dockyard. "Of course you'd find him," came a smooth, mocking voice. Colton Reeves stepped from the shadows, cigarette glowing in the dark. He wore the same leather jacket, his blonde hair slicked from the rain. Two men flanked him, Dean Mercer, a burly man with a shaved head and a crooked nose, and Luis Vega, lean, wiry, with a thin scar cutting across his cheek. Dean carried a metal pipe, Luis, a knife that glinted under the dock lights. Logan positioned himself between them and Daniel. "Let him go, Reeves." Colton laughed, low and easy. "You don't stroll into my business and start making demands, officer. Carter borrowed money. He didn't pay. That's how the world works." His smile widened. "And now, he's collateral." Sarah stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm. "You've destroyed enough lives, Colton. I won't let you do it again." Colton's gaze flicked to her, amusement glinting. "Ah, Sarah, always so righteous after the fact. You of all people know how this game ends?" Before Logan could reply, Rook lunged forward, teeth bared, growling so fiercely that Dean instinctively stepped back. The dog stood low and ready, eyes fixed on the men, with a predator's intensity. Logan seized the moment. "You've got two choices," Logan said evenly. "Walk away now, or deal with all of us." His voice was low, steady, each word iron. Luis sneered, twirling the knife. "You think one cop and his dog can take us?" But Colton's smile faltered as Rook advanced another step, hackles raised, growl deepening into a sound that promised violence. The standoff stretched, the only sound the rain pattering on steel. Finally, Colton raised a hand. "Enough." His tone carried annoyance, but his eyes flickered warily toward Rook. "This isn't over, Hart. Carter isn't worth the trouble you're making." He snapped his fingers, and his men retreated into the shadows, though Luis glared back with hatred sharp enough to cut. When they were gone, Logan exhaled slowly, moving to the container. With Sarah's help, he broke the chain and pulled the doors open. Daniel slumped forward into his arms, weak but alive. "Lily?" Daniel whispered hoarsely. "Is she safe?" "She's safe," Logan assured him, his voice softening. "She's waiting for you." Daniel's eyes closed briefly, tears mixing with rain on his face. Rook pressed close, sniffing at him, then sat firmly as if to guard him. Sarah crouched beside them, her hand trembling as she cut the rope from Daniel's wrists. The night wind swept in from the river, carrying the scent of rust and salt. Logan looked out over the dark water, his grip tightening on Daniel's shoulder. The fight wasn't finished, not with Colton still free, but for now, they had what mattered most. Daniel Carter was alive. In the end, what saved Daniel and his little girl was not only courage and loyalty, but the miracle of love that God plants in every heart. Sometimes life feels like a storm that will never end, but just as the dawn follows the night, God's hand can turn despair into hope. In our daily lives, we may face moments of fear, loss, or loneliness, yet we are never truly abandoned. The same God who watched over this family watches over you, guiding your steps even when the road feels dark. If this story touched your heart, please share it with others. Leave a comment to let us know your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss another story of hope. And if you believe that God still works miracles today, write Amen in the comments. May the Lord bless you and keep you always.